ladies and gentlemen, I'm Hiral Dadia. We have Dr. Aruna Sharma, practicing development economist and former Steel Secretary, joining us on the show. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sharma. My first question coming to you is, economies across are facing a tough time. And the thing is, yes, COVID has played spoil sport here, but there was an anticipation of a recessionary phase, anticipation of a slowdown, and you have COVID-19, which has come in and spoiled spoiled it further. What's your take?
What you have said is proving to be right, and our economy was on a sliding slope, and therefore this COVID hit is worst. That is what is happening. But then we have a silver lining that India is a big consumer country, 1.5 billion. We are not so much export dependent on our entire economy. So if we are able to produce quality goods in a sustained manner and the demand is increased, then at least, we will have a reasonably good GDP growth as we are moving ahead. So it is like a silver lining to India, a big population, we should be able to manage, but then we have to be at our edge of the chair and really manage it.
Absolutely, your point taken. And overall, if you see, even with regards to COVID-19, we could probably, it's more of a tectonic shift at scientific, social, economic, and political levels across. Overall, I think the economic impact, if you go to see, it's actually left behind the US-China trade war, the US presidential elections, Brexit, great slowdown. And I think there is a possibility that all of this will actually appear like a footnote in history relative to COVID. But if you have to talk about India's GDP, if you have to look at consensus numbers, everyone is expecting a range of around 1 to 3%, which is far better than the developing economies where the expectation is that they could be in the negative side. Now, if that's the situation, do you think that the steps that have been taken so far by the government will suffice to be in that 1 to 3% range, or a lot more would have to be done?
Quite a lot has to be done, because what is anticipated in this 1.9 or zero point 0.8, in that range people are talking about, there is every chance that we may slip to negative if we are not focused and not moving well. See, what are the two problems we face? One problem is we have to create employment and we have to have a consistent, sustainable employment. And second thing, what we have to do is that we have to ensure that the sectors on which they are working on will trigger our GDP growth in a sustained manner. It's not like shoot up and down. It should not be like a W. It has to be like a V curve where we start going up. So in this, what I will say is that if you look at it, which are the sectors which will give you a lot of employment, is one, agriculture and value addition to agriculture. See, what is very, very important is we can push down one-step value addition bank in the rural areas. Now, I'll give you two examples. Like if you're growing tomatoes, the pulp can be made in the rural areas. And then by insulated van, you carry to the professionals who do whatever processing is to be done for it. Similarly, for pudina, you can easily convert the pudina into convert into menthol, and then sort of move ahead with the menthol. And menthol is used by confectionery and the pharmaceutical industry. Now, this is something we have to encourage. We have to map it and give it so that we create a rural employment and add on in a sustainable manner, where marketing is handled by the professionals and branding handled by the professionals. The other sector is mining. After agriculture, mining provides a great employment. And it is very important that we focus on mining. We open up all the mines, all hitch what we have there are ironed out, and we move ahead on it. And based on these mining sectors, we have manufacturing industries. So India is quite strong in either steel, aluminium, or gold processing. So whichever minerals we are blessed with, we know how to process it. So that is going to trigger. And to ensure that these factories and mines work, we have to give a boost to the infrastructure. So the moment you give infrastructure in rural areas, you should have a topmost. In fact, this should be a turning point to give a quality infrastructure in rural areas. So whether this is access road, having drainage, having sewage, pipeline water, cement concrete roads, pakka buildings, this is the time to trigger. And in other areas where infrastructure are, of course, highways, buildings, and everything. All this is going to put money in the hands of people. So the demand will get created to your fast moving consumer goods as well. So if we focus on the three sectors, that is agriculture with value addition, bank in the rural areas, mining with its related industry, and infrastructure, at least it will put the wheel rolling and start the money flow in the hands of the people. And that will create a demand and that will trigger the economy. And among them put together, they contribute around 2 to 3% in the economy. And if I add on the agriculture, it will go up a bit. So we can have a sustained growth at least of 2% to 3% when we are moving it.
That's a very valid point that you've made right now as well. Especially if you have to talk about agriculture, economy, and infrastructure. Now, do you think if you have to look at these three sectors and for revival to take place to get growth going, do you think something like an Indian sovereign fund that should be created by the government, taking into consideration, the world's largest sovereign funds and alternative asset managers to come together, and that's when you start doing your allocations?
See, I'll tell you one thing. I was going through the various demand list of various associations and FICCIs and CIIs, SOCHAPs. Everybody is saying, give us a package, give us a package. When we all know that the income flow to the treasury is going down. And the government is in a balancing act to the committed expenditures vis-a-vis what can be offered. So here I look at the alternative to the banks. The RBI has done two major things. They have reduced the repo rates, so the interest rates have come down. They have reduced the inverse repo rate also.
Correct.
Unfortunately, the banks are under the fear psychosis. So instead of lending, they prefer to put extra money with the RBI. And you had a shoot up growth of nearly 7 lakh crores there. Now, what is important is the bankers will have to take a call. If they don't lend now, they are going to end up with NPA and therefore huge haircuts. If they lend now, there is a possibility that 80% is going to succeed, 20% may fail. So 80% will trigger the economy, they will get back the money and they are moving ahead. So this is very important. This is the time the bankers have to come forward, do and give working capital. See, no industry, whether we are talking about the manufacturing sector or we are talking the value addition sectors, no industry is going to go for capital expansion now. What they want is the working capital. And that working capital, a short term of 5 months, 6 months is given, lower interest rates, hand holding, it is going to really oil the wheels and literally make them have an accelerated speed. And that is where the banks have to come down. And here I'd like to just add, the FDI and FPI is not going to come first. When the banks will start lending, the manufacturing will start, the industry will start rolling, and all the economy will start rolling. Only and only then the FDI and FPI will think of coming to India. So the focus has to be, we have liquidity on one hand with the banks, give them a confidence. The 4 C's, the CBCs and the CBC and CBIs and all this have to be kept on hold for a little time. This is not a time to regulate. This is a time for everybody to put hand to erect the edifice of economic.
Absolutely, a point well taken on this front, because yes, if the banks don't really lend right now, they will be creating further NPAs, because the propensity, the ability and the capability of these businesses to pay their loans, to pay back their EMIs is something which is going to go down. In fact, yesterday I was talking to the CEO of the Retail Association as well, and he was clearly indicating that if you're talking about the retail sector as a whole, they're employing almost around 46 million people. And with that, there is a possibility that if nothing comes their way, even from the bankers, there is a possibility that 50% of the retailers will shut down. And if that happens, and if employment is affected, that is going to be another major hurdle, because that's going to be another unrest that we will have to deal with as a country.
You are absolutely right. And the Retailer Association person is also absolutely right. The bank has to come forward with the working capital to them. Their money is locked. 1.5 months, they had no flow of income. So now they have to restart a business. And as you know, like if my car was parked for 2 months, to restart the battery, it's hell of a job, right? So similarly, for them to restart the business, they have to put in more effort. They need working capital. And otherwise we'll have a double whammy. See, we have to ensure employment and GDP growth. So when we want to ensure both of them, absolutely the key lies in bank giving loan, bank coming forward to give. Enough liquidity is available. There is no problem of liquidity. So it will be really a mismanagement that on one hand we have liquidity, on other hand we starve the manufacturing, retail sectors, FMCGs and everybody. Then I think we are heading for this. This will be the stupidest thing to do, if I want to use the harshest word.
Absolutely. And overall, from here on as well, now, yes, we've been talking about financial packages, they will be useful, but this will be only and only if there is a retrigger button that has, that is pressed for the government. Now, there are two sides of it. One is providing liquidity in the, in the hands of the consumers that we've been talking about. And secondly, a lot of reforms need to come in. Until and unless both of these work in tandem, there will be hiccups that we will look at. From the reform perspective, what is the sense that you have? Where, I mean, you've mentioned the sectors where the reforms are needed, but on ground, what do you think will actually create these kind of reforms?
See, if you look at it, in these sectors, immediately you have to create an atmosphere for people to go ahead and restart their industry and start functioning. So you have to have a complete paradigm shift of over obsession on compliance to that of facilitator. This is a time that if you look at the reforms, the GST should be slashed out. Like the whole idea is to have liquidity. So if treasury is under strain, the what best to do? You slash down half the income which is going to flow to you, right? So there nothing, no hit is on the treasury, and you can really reduce down the GST to half. And the compliance factor, you have to be a little liberal. Allow them a quarterly compliance. Allow them to go ahead along with that. So instead of hounding them that somebody has caught the coronavirus among their laborers, or hounding them that, okay, you are not doing, say everybody is rebuilding it. So when rebuilding, there will be some errors. So we have to facilitate them and handle it carefully. The precautions have to be taken, which everybody will take, because their own life will get affected. So precautions is bound to happen. So under those precautions, how do you move ahead? How do you do? So one reform has to come is to slash down the GST. Second thing is, when we are talking about the packages, is to give confidence to the bank to push the liquidity. So both GST reduction and bank lending will bring down the liquidity, will provide a lot of liquidity in the market. Then some of the sectors is asking for big package relief, which I don't think so the government is sitting on funds to help them out. But we can help them out maybe in the financial year 2021 with some tax concessions, right? That's again to push in the liquidity. So all the three reforms, what I'm talking about is should be to push the liquidity. Our manufacturers are capable of doing it. And fourth, most important is there are a lot of small irritants for our manufacturers to shift to make in India. So when we are a big consumer country, and fast moving manufacturing goods is our manufacturers have become traders. They prefer to trade from sort of import from, they used to get from China. If not China, now they'll get from Indonesia or Vietnam or some place. But we are capable of manufacturing. But there are small issues of loading, unloading, internal ports, not having ports, the value chain, all these irritants. So it is like when you are in crisis, you have to be on drawing board, and the beauty lies in detailing. If you do the detailing there and plug the holes, I'm very optimistic that we can trigger into it. So if you look at it, not many reforms we want from the government. Slash the GST, reduce the tax rate as we are moving ahead, remove the irritants by shifting from compliance mode to facilitators mode. And for this, remove these irritants small into the whole cycle to shift to the Make in India mode. Right. I think with these four done, along with the bankers' liquidity pushing in, this is a clear-cut recipe of success. I don't see a failure there.
Right. And, with everything that we've said, we've been talking about that, yes, the consumption is so vast in India that we don't really look at exporting majority of it. But with the kind of disruptions that we've seen, in terms of the global supply chain as well, if we play our cards right, if we don't look at competition within the country and turn it around as co-opetition, do you think it will give India an opportunity to supplement China then?
It goes like this. China, they are out of their coronavirus pandemic and they have restarted their industry, right? And now, whatever China has gone in a big way to invest in Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh.
Correct.
So the export point will not be only China, it will be these countries also. They have invested quite a lot into the infrastructure in the African countries. So their economy is now across the border of China and spread all over. Now, there will be vacuums in which we can easily step in. But like you say, you need a base level. What you said it correctly. We being a consumer country, our base level itself is so high that it will trigger off any industry. And then they can venture out to compete in the export market. We can. If you look at it, we are the biggest car manufacturing sector in the export. And we can do it. We are exporting 10% of high-grade steel. We can do it. We are been exporting in which the margins are not been high, say handicrafts or handlooms and other things. But at this moment of time, it is the fast-moving goods like textiles, your bed sheets, towels, everything, where we are a big exporter. So that market is available for us. We can easily go with our supply chain, with our facilitation, and we already have a foot there. So wherever we have a foot to accelerate that and to jump up, it's possible, and that window is open for us. But for that, it is very important that the government and the manufacturers have to have a common objective that we have to succeed.
Right.
It should not be what you rightly said is creating entrance for each other. Trust them.
Absolutely. And with regards to the kind of representations that have been made, by different sectors to Niti Aayog, which has been then taken to the government, yes, everyone is asking for a package. There are a lot of common points over here is with regards to where the moratorium of the loan goes, or probably elongated interest-free loans, maybe even participate, in terms of the employee salary so that we don't see job losses. If you have to take the employment side of it, do you think that's something that the government will be able to actually come ahead and support in these times?
You have said it absolutely right. The labor problem has become a critical because with a sudden lockdown they were stuck, and they are naturally, when you have nothing else to do and no income regular flow coming, and many of them were feeding from dhabas. They did not even have a kitchen. So definitely the desperate need is to go home. Now that they have been allowing to go home, their first reaction will be to go home, settle family members, and only then think to come back. So we are going to have a gap of labor shortage for a month or so. Those who have already reached home before the lockdown, they will also wait and watch that again they will not suffer this kind of a misery of having nothing else to do. So they will also wait for them to come back. So the outcome of this is going to be, and let me be very, very clear about it, the manufacturing sector will go more and more for automation, right? So you have to provide jobs in the rural area, like I said, your Manrega, 15 Finance Commission fund flow, State Finance Commission fund flow, you have to push it down so that you create employment there. The value addition industries you encourage, you push the employment there. And whatever migrates to the urban area, and this loss of wages, which is absolutely what you rightly said is a burden to the manufacturer. Many of them are not capable of even paying. We have a huge store of funds in Employment's Provident Fund, right? This is the time to tap it. And maybe you can recover in a course of time in bits and pieces spread over 3 years, 4 years to again recoup the kitty of what you are giving out. This is the time you have to provide it. The second thing is what you have said on moratorium. Moratorium became a non-starter because you did not have back-to-back arrangement. It was not, there will be no interest charge. So if you take a moratorium, if you take advantage of it, there's going to be interest on interest.
Correct.
So you may end up paying more. So unless until you are in a sheer problem of liquidity, nobody is going to affect it. If you look at NBFC and MFIs, then they are the one who cater for the small lenders. Now, what is happening to the small lenders? They are going to pass on the moratorium to them,
Hmm.
looking at the critical stage they are in. They are not capable of going.
Hmm.
But back to back, there is still a debate going on in spite of RBI instructions of bank giving a back-to-back moratorium to them. So
Correct.
it's not going to start off. So that's what I say in a hierarchy when you take a decision to give a moratorium, it has to be starting from the MFI to the bank. So MFI, NBFC, small finance banks, all of them have to be in chain to pass on the moratorium of whosoever has taken a loan from them. Only then it is effective. And yes, it is important to give a moratorium of 6 months. So you tap the Employment Provident Fund, you provide employment in local areas, you give this moratorium for 6 months with a back-to-back arrangement, and interest rate, the repo rates have come down. So interest rates have come down. So low interest rates, it should be provided. And in critical sectors, if need be, there could be an interest holiday also for a couple of months. It is like what I said before, end up in NPA and haircut. That
Correct.
balance sheet, you have to compare it with the balance sheet today
Hmm.
of losing interest for 6 months. So I'm very sure losing interest for 6 months is a better gainer to the banks. If you look from their perspective, a better gainer to GDP growth, a better gainer to trigger back the economy. And everywhere there is a plus plus. So instead of ending up with an NPA, unemployment, and like you rightly said
Hmm.
before,
Hmm.
all retail shops, if they don't open, what are you going to do with this? They'll
Correct.
become a big liability and big problem.
Correct. And in fact, I've been talking to a lot of NGOs, a lot of doctors who've been treating people, helping fight COVID in the villages right now. They're dealing with the migrant community as well. Now, the biggest thing is they don't really have fear as to what's happening with us with COVID, because the number of deaths that they are seeing on the back of, say, tuberculosis, on the back of, say, diarrhea, that has been a far bigger number versus COVID. Now, and when their tests have been conducted, all of them fortunately have been negative. So again, the thought process in their mind is that why do we go back to the cities right now and get infected, because everyone knows this is more of an urban problem. If you see the kind of numbers that are coming out as well right now, it's mainly the bigger cities who are facing issues of infection. It's not the villages. So that is another mental block that they're living with as to why do we come back. Now if that's going to be the scenario, yes, jumpstarting rural India is going to be the only way out, because manufacturers are going to have a tough time. Yes, they would have to probably increase their wages as well. It's like giving them a carrot on the stick saying that, okay, I'm increasing your wages and hence you need to come back. But if that's the situation, how bad is the inflation going to be from here on?
See, if I look at it, I don't see much of inflation because inflation is also a factor of demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the demand factor is slow. Demand factor is going to grow only when the liquidity comes in the hands of the people. They start getting money. So wages are getting paid, others are getting paid, and they are going to go for low cost food items, low cost living, low cost essentials. Only that is going to sort of trigger the market immediately. And vegetables and everything, I don't see much inflation because the market will open. It was rotting. So it was a demand and supply issue why the vegetables were becoming more expensive because of lockdown. So if the supply chain starts off, it will balance it out. So if you try to balance it out, the inflation is not going to be my point of view, and my understanding is it's not a factor to worry about at this moment of time. Not at all. You infuse the money, you increase your deficit in the budget at national level. And what has happened is the GST share has not reached the state governments, right? So state governments are
Hmm.
starved of money, and therefore you must have seen that Delhi has put a levy of 30 paisa on petrol and diesel. And similarly, the liquor shops have opened up. So it is sort of a getting revenue for the state governments, so that the fund flow will start with the state governments for them to extend the whatever essentials of healthcare is important at this moment of time. So definitely behavioral change is going to be, if we are able to create jobs in rural areas, the migration will stop, which is not a bad idea at all. Because manufacturing labor from labor intensive, we can become machine incentive. And that investment will start off provided the money flows in. And today, in a house, maybe previously 4 boys used to migrate, maybe
Hmm.
two will migrate.
Correct.
And that will happen not just by the manufacturer saying, in time of crisis, it is very important to pick up the best practices. So if we develop a common household database and not difficult, we have 8 states which had did, and they had no problems during this problem to have a transfer of direct benefit transfer or for the PDS. So if we shift over and 2 more are in the process of going for it, so we can do the entire thing at one stroke within 2 months. And I will say, one, in PDS shop at this moment of time for 3 months, no questions asked. Anybody who wants a grain, give it. How does it matter? Somebody may deceive and take the grain. What percentage it will be? Less than 10. It will be a single digit percentage. So it doesn't matter. We have enough food grains with us. But in these 3 months, if we develop this database, which is true for your all social protection schemes as well as your PDS, it will allow a single member of a family to draw from a PDS of its migrant place, right? And rest of the family can draw from the village. This arrangements will again attract the labor to move to the towns because they will know the food grains, they will get it from the PDS, their wages are secured and they are going to go ahead with it, and they are better to start off the jobs. They are skilled. They know there is a value to their skill. And a skilled person can't sit idle. It can't do something else. So it will again migrate to the towns and go for better skilling. So the scenario is the migrant labor percentage will come down, which is a good sign. We must generate employment and push it down to the Mofussil towns or maybe a group of 10 panchayat towns. So as much labor we can push it there. The rest skilled labor is bound to migrate. Give them an opportunity to draw from PDS even as a single member by Digital India having a common household database. So, and most important is a healthcare, right? We have to again focus on our tiered system of public healthcare. And much is preventive and public healthcare. And like you all very correctly said, the rural population has proven to be more sturdier, who is able to combat the coronavirus, than all air-conditioned sitting kind of a population, whose immunity has gone down and who got affected very quickly.
Correct.
So with this kind of a scenario, if we are able to provide it, and what you rightly said on number of deaths, in every town we have a quarantine hospital for tuberculosis. It is lying dead. So this is a time to revamp that hospital and create it. So anytime we want to quarantine some people with best of the facilities, best of healthcare, have a space. You just have to spruce it up so that people are able to be put there. And we have to learn to live with this, because what you correctly said, the number of deaths in India is very small compared to others. It did not spread like pandemic in India. And the people have learned to take precaution thanks to lockdown. They take precautions, they keep a mask at least, if not distancing. But that is what is happening. So not at all a bad scenario. But testing, identifying at early stage, correct guidance, because 80% cure is by staying at home and quarantining yourself. 20% need hospitalization. In that also they say 5% is critical. So in the sense it is, we can manage, provided we ensure that our health system is strong. They are helped with all equipments, and we can manufacture that equipment. In coronavirus they started making. प्यास लगने पे कुआं खोदना शुरू किया.
Correct.
So we can do it now. So now we can have a regular supply of these testing machines and testing facilities to all our length and breadth of the hospitals. So it is possible that your social protection by adopting common household data. So whether it is your PDS system, your pensions, whatever, wages transfer, direct benefit transfer, that is one side of the story. And other side is strengthen your public health care, right from your public healthcare system to your tertiary care. I think this focus is going to make it.
Right. What is the what's your point of view if you have to create a social impact fund for this migrant community, for these daily wage earners? Because see, none of them are protected with a pension fund. I mean, yes, the government provides insurance at the cheapest of the cheapest rates, so that's something probably they look at. But if the corporates who are employing these migrant community workers, skilled and unskilled, if they have to use their CSR portion of it to create a fund for these guys and say, okay, number one, probably we will take some portion of your wages. This will be used in times of natural calamities and disasters like these. If we are saved from all of that. It will come to you back. You can use it in the form of insurance, or the money will come to you on retirement. Do you think a law like this by the government should be enforced on corporates? Because right now, yes, there is CSR, but I mean, it's not deep dived into yet in our country.
Uh, I think it's a brilliant idea what you're talking about, because the government did try with these pension schemes, which could never take off.
Correct.
And simple reason is the labor is not ready to pay the premium.
Hmm.
His demand on money, priorities, this is, I think, not there at all in the list. So they don't think that whatever is a compulsory accident insurance covered or Atal pension age, on death is ready to give 2 lakhs to the workers.
Correct.
Or you have a labor department with huge money sitting with them, in every state.
Hmm.
Now that money is available, which can lead to this fund. And CSR also, we have to understand very clearly. Unfortunately, we are treating CSR as a budgeted item. No. CSR is a 2% which industry has to put to trigger by doing a social reforms their own business. So if we go what you have suggested very, very nicely, that if we tell them that, okay, you have to create a fund that besides the EPF and everything, what a labor will get on retirement, this is also an amount, a bulk amount you have to pay at different grades. They'll be very happy to park that money. Very, very happy to park that money. Because, today it is getting supplemented to what is already a government responsibility. Like toilet making, we have a sanitation department and a scheme. We should do that from there, not coming from you.
Correct.
And here is the one where we should be innovative enough. And CSR very clearly says we should not do what is budgeted.
Correct.
So the wordings are absolutely clear in this. So let us not mix up issues. And what you have rightly suggested, it is very important that this contract labor slowly moves back into a regular labor kind.
Correct.
So automatically, they become a little better organized, and then they are protected with all this, which takes care of healthcare as well as their old age. Then there is a standard government old age pension which can get hooked to these laborers the moment they retire and they are back at home. So it can be an auto mode, like, okay, you retired, you're back home, you are about, say, 70 years of age, this is what you start getting instead of 60. You can push it 10 years more. So this kind of an arrangement, if we start doing it, so what is coming out is very clear. Focus on few areas, work out this fine tune it, instead of every day coming up with one scheme, okay, we'll give you 2 rupees, we'll give you 500 rupees, we'll give you 2,000 rupees, we'll give you 1,000 rupees. It doesn't lead us anywhere. It doesn't lead us anywhere. So if we are able to do this, which will take care of a complete life story of a labor, I think that will be more permanent, more sustainable, and way to go ahead.
Well, I think I would love to work on something like this. I will get in touch with you as well offline to understand more as to something, how we can actually better their lives from here on. But very lastly, Dr. Sharma, my question is, does the government need to look at fiscal deficit right now? Or is that something that they just need to blindfold their eyes, don't look at the fiscal deficit side of it, and increase their expenditure?
See, let me give you a small example. In distress, when you have to push in the money, you cut corners. But if you don't push in the money, you can't start off the business. So this is the time, and for infrastructure, there is nobody who is going to push in the money. So government has to sort of increase their obsession of 3.5% of deficit. The deficit gap has to be opened up. You have to flow the money in the market. You have to trigger off the infrastructure units, and the infrastructure work start off in a very big way. And the moment you trigger it, it will start rolling, and you will come down to your basics maybe 3 years down the line. So it's okay. It doesn't matter. This is the time which needs a different treatment.
Absolutely. I mean, it needs a different reach. And lastly, we are just getting a question from a viewer saying that will the budget for health and medical education increase, or the same bureaucratic hurdles will continue, because public health requires doctors, and how will you produce them?
You are absolutely right. We have to increase our expenditure on health. There cannot be a debate on that at all. But, sometimes it is a management issue also. Like if you take from public healthcare to community healthcare unit to district health, hospitals to that of medical college hospitals in that chain, what is possible to do immediately is to ensure that it is manned properly and medicine supplies there. See, medicine is not a problem because we have already shifted to generic medicines and medicine availability is already being honed up. So what is very important is you put one allopathic doctor, one Ayush doctor, one ANM, two nurses in every PSC and so on and so forth in CHC and district hospital. That doesn't require money. You have to rearrange your things and go ahead and do it. So that you are able to give basic preventive health care, early detections, and then if need be hospitalization. That doesn't require money aspect. It has to, again going back to drawing board, map these places and go ahead and do it. And once you strengthen this and once you are able to do it, yes, slowly you start enhancing your health ecosystem. Because you understand very clearly, it is the government's responsibility to give health and education across the world, right? So when it is your responsibility, better we do it the best, right? So in the sense, the industry can take care of it, the employment can generate, others can do, but these are two responsibilities you can't offload from the shoulder of the government. It has to be there. So therefore, in health, the expenditure has to go up. See, it's not an issue of medicines, it's more an issue of management, and we spread thin into so many things, right? That thinning we can convert it and sort of funnel it down, and then keep on adding maybe a 1% of GDP every 2 years, and I think we will reach what we are designed for.
Absolutely. I think a new normal, a completely, rejuvenated India is what all of us need to look at from here on as well. Make the reforms, help the government and support them as well in terms of the reforms that they are making, because there will be a lot of collaboration that will be required at individual, business, corporate, and, the government level as well. So I think everyone needs to work in tandem. But thank you, Dr. Sharma. Thank you so much for joining us on the show as well. And it was indeed, a insightful conversation that we've had today. I think all of us are taking back a lot with us in terms of what we've learned today. But thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.